Welcome to the Resilient Retail Game Plan, a podcast for anyone wanting to start, grow or scale a profitable creative product business with me, Catherine Erdley. The Resilient Retail Game Plan is a podcast dedicated to one thing, breaking down the concepts and tools that I've gathered from 20 years in the retail industry and showing you how you can use them in your business. This is the real nuts and bolts of running a successful product business, broken down in an easy, accessible way. This is not a podcast about learning how to make your business look good. It's the tools and techniques that will make you and your business feel good. Confidently plan, launch and manage your products, and feel in control of your sales numbers and cash flow to help you build a resilient retail business. Welcome. It is episode number 99 of the Resilient Retail Game Plan. I am so happy that you've decided to join me today. My name's Catherine Erdley. I'm your host, as well as the founder of the Resilient Retail Club, which is my membership group for product businesses. You can find out more at resilientretailclub.com. And if you use the code 10podcast, that's 10podcast, you can get £10 off your first month as a member. Today's episode is all about Instagram. Now, I know I've touched on Instagram from time to time when I've had things like my pep talk that I did a couple of weeks ago, and I know it's a topic that's come up a lot with some of my guests, but I wanted to dedicate some time in this episode to the platform. And the reason is this: I wanted to explore why now is a great time for you to reassess your Instagram strategy. Why I felt like this was a good time to talk about it is that I suddenly realized that so many of the conversations that I'd been having with club members, with small businesses who I talk to on Instagram as well, and also, to be honest, a lot of the consulting work that I've been doing recently has addressed Instagram in some way, shape or form. And sometimes it's been really quite a central piece of what we've been doing. For example, I've worked with a number of businesses recently on diversifying out of Instagram and looking at different ways that they could de-risk really their marketing strategy in the light of what's happening on the platform. So it seemed like it was worth dedicating an episode to Instagram because for many people, rightly or wrongly, well, wrongly, I'd say probably, Instagram is their marketing strategy. So many people that I've spoken to, in fact, probably I'd say one of the common themes with companies that I've been working with in consultancy has been that they've seen a huge amount of success on Instagram and therefore have put a lot of their emphasis on their marketing and their selling activities into the platform. And as a result, even though they maybe have still been really successful, they've just suddenly realized that there's an element of risk there when it comes to their strategy. It's one of those ironic things about how being successful in something can be a slight double-edged sword. So if you're listening to this podcast thinking, well, actually, yes, I have had a lot of success on Instagram in the past, and that's why it's so hard to, I'm not going to say let it go. I think that's probably a bit dramatic. If it's so hard to think about moving it away from its prime role, for example, in marketing, it can actually feel harder than maybe if you're somebody who has found the platform difficult from the get-go. So if you are listening to this and you think, actually, I've always found Instagram difficult, ironically, you've probably been forced to think about things slightly differently a little bit earlier than perhaps other people have. So it's not necessarily a negative. Really, with Instagram, a lot of what's been happening is there's been a lot of talk about how the platform's down. One of the things that I find really tricky is when people say things like, oh, the algorithm's being such a jerk at the moment and it's hiding my posts and this kind of thing. It is really tempting to feel that way if your content isn't getting the reaction that you want. People have been telling me that their overall organic reach has been down, and people have seen significant differences with the way that their content is getting in front of people, and also in a way that there have been significant differences if you've done a launch, for example, and what you're used to doing is talking to your Instagram followers and then putting products up and then seeing a really good response to that, a lot of people who had that as one of their key mechanisms for driving sales have maybe found that a little bit harder in 2022 compared to previous years. So there's lots of feelings. I'm trying to avoid being too negative because I think that there's just a lot of talk at the moment, especially in the small business community, about Instagram's dead, or this is, it's all over, or, organic reach is just terrible. And I think that it's one of the examples of times where it's not always useful to allow yourself to say, oh, well, it's all just terrible. That has nothing to do with me. Because although there may be shifts in the platform and there will be shifts in the types of content that are being prioritized, I don't know that I would ever say that you can always just put your hands up and say, well, it's being really terrible right now, and therefore there's nothing I can do about it. More useful, I think, is to take a look at Instagram and to look at the role that it plays in your business and to look at the percentage of your sales that are coming from Instagram, and to ask yourself if you have an over-reliance on a platform which effectively is not within your control, and whether or not you want to use this opportunity to start asking yourself if there are other activities that you could be doing instead, or as well as Instagram. The other thing about Instagram is that it is a huge time suck. A lot of people I talk to who have built their businesses really with Instagram at the heart of it, they often are spending a huge amount of time on the platform. So again, there are maybe opportunities to re-look at your marketing strategy, re-looking at your sales strategy. As I said, that's a lot of the work that I have been doing, and looking at ways that you can actually diversify things, and you may even, who knows, get some time back as a result of all of that. You know that I love stats. I love facts and figures. I love looking at the detail in terms of what we can see as far as we can see it. It's not that easy to see figures about organic reach. On Instagram, a typical organic reach of a post, for example, this year versus last year, that sort of information is hard to get to. But what we can look at is Instagram overall and what we're seeing as a platform. I was doing a lot of looking at social media platform stats. I've pulled various different bits from various different places, but it's very interesting looking at it. Effectively, Instagram is the fourth largest social media platform in the world after Facebook, YouTube, WhatsApp, which is very interesting because I wouldn't have called that a social media platform, but there you go. And then Instagram. And when people are talking about social media platforms, they're often talking about a statistic called the monthly active users, MAU. So the MAU for Instagram, for example, is about 1.4 billion people. So 1.4 billion people are active on Instagram each month, and approximately 500 million users are active every day. So every day on Instagram, there's around 500 million people on there. This is still growth. Last year, Instagram was at about 1.2. Now this is saying it looks like it's about 1.4. So it's definitely not a platform in decline. I think it's interesting, actually, to be honest, that Facebook's still up there as number one. And I do know people who tell me that they get the majority of their sales from Facebook, even though a lot of people very rarely talk about Facebook too much these days, or it kind of depends on their product area and ultimately where their customer is. So Instagram's still growing, 1.2 million last year, 1.2 billion, 1.4 billion monthly active users this year. A lot of the chat about TikTok has been the speed at which TikTok has exceeded 1 billion monthly average users. That happened very, very fast in comparison to some of the other platforms. But technically at the moment, still TikTok is below Instagram in terms of monthly average users. The reason that TikTok's getting so much airtime is because not only is it growing fast, so it's hit this 1 billion monthly active users, it's really to do with the time on the platform. And I think that really plays into why the TikTok organic reach is so much better at the moment than the Instagram organic reach. So at the moment, TikTok users are spending about 53 minutes a day. So very roughly speaking, probably about 27, 28 hours a month on TikTok. Whereas Instagram users are spending about 11.2 hours. That is up from 10.3 hours last year. So there are more users spending more time. But when you compare that to the amount of time that TikTok users are spending on the platform, it's quite significantly different. And again, I think that would be my guess why Instagram reach compared to TikTok reach is, well, for a lot of people, they're seeing numbers that they just haven't seen on Instagram. There's probably a big piece of it, just the amount of time people are watching content. Therefore, the chances of the content being seen and the amount of content that needs to be shared is increased. So if you're on TikTok, it makes sense that you've got more chance of your content being seen by more people. That said, nothing from what we've seen here really is suggesting that Instagram is in decline. It certainly looks like amount of time spent and a number of people on the platform has been increasing. I think the key thing really, and from talking to a lot of people, one of the difficult things is that the type of content has shifted. So if you grew your Instagram on the basis of really great photos, then this is just the content that is not as effective, to be honest. They're prioritizing video content, and they are prioritizing short form video content. So Reels, for example, you can probably see if you look at your own analytics, you're able to see in Instagram who's seeing your posts and the split between new users and existing users. And personally, for me, I see that on my account that my Reels get seen by a lot of new people in compared to people who are already following me. But things like my stories are really only seen by people already following me. Not that that's a problem with that at all. In fact, one thing I'd like to point out as well is that it's not always about growth with social media. In fact, it's a lot of the time it's about building relationships. So just because something's only being seen by existing followers doesn't mean that's a bad thing. But in terms of actually getting out in front of new people, it's definitely video content. 100% it's video content. And when you look at things like on your feed posts, static feed posts typically are not getting the same kind of organic reach. The sort of theme of this episode was really why it's time to reevaluate your Instagram strategy. And one thing that you could do in this reevaluation is say, well, actually, okay, let's take the time and think about what is the content that is being consumed on the platform right now. Okay, it's video content. What does that mean for my customer? And it sounds like a harsh thing to say, but I think you really have to be honest with yourself on Instagram if you've been struggling with it. Is it that you've tried absolutely everything and you've really put everything into creating the kind of content you know is being prioritized on Instagram at the moment and it still doesn't seem to be working? Or is it a question of you're finding it difficult because what you're used to creating isn't resonating in the same way anymore with your ideal customer? And I think that you do have to be really honest, and it's kind of a sort of tough, you have to give yourself tough love, which sounds a bit crazy. But I think the one thing I just want to say is what I find frustrating when I see people talking about it and saying things like, oh, Instagram isn't working anymore, or it's dead, or the algorithm is being a jerk. The Instagram themselves are pretty clear about what they're prioritizing. They've been saying for a long time it's about video content. And I think you have to ask yourself, is it the platform or is it my content? And lots of other people talk about this. Janet Murray, I know in particular, is somebody who I've followed for a long time. She talks about it. You have to give yourself, but again, tough love. Is it my content or is it the platform? Because I think the key thing you have to remember about these platforms is that these are multi-billion-dollar companies. These are some of the wealthiest companies in the world. They have a hugely vested interest in keeping people on the app. They want eyes on the app because the more eyes that are on the app, the more money is going to be spent by companies advertising to the people on the app, and that's where they make their money. So these companies have an absolute deeply vested interest. It's their entire business purpose is to keep users on the app. And to do that, they're going to show them the content that is most likely to get them to interact with the app and stay on the app. They want them to consume it. They want them to look at it. It is nothing personal about penalizing small businesses. It is simply about, is your content engaging your customer and keeping your customer on the app? And if the answer is yes, it will get shown to more people. And if the answer is no, then it won't get shown to as many people. So that is the first thing I've sort of gone off on a rant about this, but I just think that if you are sitting here Or if you have been thinking to yourself, oh, Instagram just doesn't work for me anymore. When you first started using Instagram, did you know how to use it effectively? Or did you learn over time that certain things worked and certain things didn't work? I think it's just always good every few months to almost give it a shake up and think, right, well, what else can I do differently? And really try and come up with a new strategy for your content. So that's the first thing I would suggest is a new strategy for your content. But as I said, why else do you need to be thinking about relooking at your Instagram strategy? So we talked about the changes in the platform. We've talked about the growth of other platforms, for example, TikTok. We've talked about shifting in content. But I think the other thing that I would say as well is that I've had this conversation with people right from 2018 when I started my business. And a lot of people then were talking about Instagram, and a lot of people were spending a lot of time on Instagram at that point and not always seeing the results that they wanted, or they were, but it was really, really time consuming. And ever since then, I know I'm saying like, oh, I figured this all out ages ago, but I don't mean it to come across like that. I think what I'm trying to say is that a lot of what people are talking about now is not new. It's easy to think, oh, Instagram in 2022 is particularly tricky. But I think that, again, this is a conversation that I've had over a number of years. And I think that one of the issues with social media traffic, I know I've said this before, is that it's lower converting than a lot of other types of traffic. So, for example, if somebody does a Google search for a black long sleeve dress and they independent fashion made in the UK, and they find your brand and you sell, of course, long sleeve black independent UK fashion, then the chances are they are much more likely to purchase that dress from you because they were looking for something and they found you and you had what they were looking for. Now, they may still not purchase. They may look at the dress and it's not quite what they were looking for, or you don't have the size, or it's not the price they wanted to pay, but they were looking for something that you had, and that's where they arrived. The same if you send an email and there's somebody who's already bought from you, they're already a much warmer customer. In comparison, social media traffic tends to convert at around 0.8% compared to the average of 2%. So that's the average conversion rate for all websites, all sales from all types of traffic. And it compares to 4% from email marketing. So social media is already lower converting. It's a really fantastic way of building a community, especially on Instagram. If it's something that is your primary source of traffic, it can actually really cause you to spin your wheels a lot because you're trying to drive people to your website, of course, but then they're not necessarily going to be buying from you in the same way that they would if they were coming to you via SEO, for example. So if you're struggling with your results from Instagram, as well as looking at the types of content that you're doing, then also thinking about the ways that you can diversify the traffic that's coming to your website by focusing on other things, from PR to SEO to collaborations to maybe exploring new types of sales channels, such as wholesale, for example. So there's lots of different things that you can do. And there's lots of reasons why you may want to do that, and at least consider it at this point. And then the final reason that you may want to rethink your Instagram strategy is that it's ultimately not your platform. So there have been several examples recently of people losing their Instagram accounts. So if you don't have two-factor authentication switched on for your Instagram account, please go and do that now. Regardless, it's a reminder that this is not our platform. It very much belongs to Meta. It is theirs to do with what they will. They can and they will make decisions. Maybe they think you violated some terms and conditions, or maybe your account was hacked. Lots and lots of different reasons why you may have issues. It is a dangerous thing to do to primarily build your business on somebody else's platform. So keep thinking about that. Keep thinking about how you can move people, for example, onto your email list, which you do own, onto your website. How can you not put all of your eggs into one basket is really what I'm trying to say. I think that the question that I'd love you to ask yourself after this episode is Instagram right-sized in my business? In other words, am I spending the right amount of time and effort on it in comparison to the results? Are you really clear about where your sales are actually coming from, the actual conversion, not just the traffic that's coming, but Where is that traffic converting? And I think as much as possible, try and remove the personal aspect. So there's a conversation that I was having with someone recently about how Instagram is so often tied into our self-worth. And there's a lot of science there behind the dopamine hit when we're getting likes and comments and validation from Instagram. And certainly I recognize that. I think many people who use Instagram, if they're really honest with themselves, will recognize that as well. So it can feel difficult if you are used to getting that kind of external validation from Instagram and you haven't been having it. It can feel really hard and it can feel like it's some kind of a reflection of your self-worth. So I would encourage you as much as is possible to take a strategic, objective look. You know, I love the strategic objective, and put on your objective hat and look at Instagram and say to yourself, okay, let's take the personal out of it. Let's just assume that it's not that I'm terrible at this and I've made a mistake and this is all a disaster. Let's just put all of that kind of messy human feeling stuff to one side just for a minute. And let's look at Instagram in your business. Ask yourself, are you overly reliant on it as a sales channel? Are you getting too high a percentage of your sales just from Instagram? So for example, I would say typically, if you're getting more than 60, 70% of your sales from any one source, in all honesty, there's probably time to think about ways that you can de-risk it. And if you feel like, well, actually it is right size, but it's just not working as well as I want it to work right now, ask yourself, are you producing the content that you know that Meta want you to produce on Instagram? Are you producing the content that your customer wants to see from you on Instagram? And being really honest with yourself about that. And if you're not sure what that is, take some time, look at other accounts. Don't even look at necessarily accounts from other businesses in your exact niche. Look at them from all over the place. I find personally, when I'm stuck for ideas on social media, spending some concentrated time, so not just sitting and scrolling, although of course I get sucked into doing that too. I mean, who doesn't? But saying, okay, I'm going to spend 20 minutes and I'm going to do a bit of research and just try and get some new ideas and try and break out of that rut a little bit. But wherever possible, I would love you to spend that time thinking about Instagram, thinking about your reliance on it. And if you feel like you're over-reliant, but you're feeling super overwhelmed and you're not really sure where to start when it comes to de-risking it, then do drop me a line. I have a strategy offering to work with people on their strategy. And as I said, this has been something that's come up a lot in my recent work. So go to resilientretailclub.com/strategy and you can find out more about that, or shoot me a DM and I'll be happy to chat about it, because I know that it can feel really overwhelming, especially, as I said, ironically, when you're really successful on a platform. But you can often think, right, well, I'm really successful, but I'm still concerned about the way this is going, and I just want to make sure that I've done what I can to de-risk the business and give myself enough of a breathing space that I'm not overly reliant on a platform that is changing in lots of different ways, and also, to be honest, may not be the best use of your time, because obviously it is really important, but it's whether or not the time allotted to it is fits the results, if that makes sense, and how can you make that work for you and for your business. So there you have it. Why not shoot me a DM over on Instagram? Let me know what you think about today's episode. Let me know if any of that resonated. Let me know how you're finding it in your business right now. Also, come join me on the 29th of June. You can come to my free online talk, which is Grow Your Sales. It's happening at 11 a.m. and there will be a replay if you can't make it live. It's going to be a great opportunity to get some ideas and inspiration about perhaps maybe some of the ways that you can diversify going forward. If you have a moment, you can rate the podcast in Spotify, in the app, or in iTunes as well. And you can also leave me a review in iTunes. I appreciate them so much. I really enjoy reading your reviews, and it makes such a difference when it comes to getting the podcast out to more people. And of course, why not tag me on Instagram at Resilient Retail Club when you're out and about listening? I love to see where you're tuning in. If if you've enjoyed this week's episode, then I invite you to check out resilientretailclub.com. The Resilient Retail Club is the membership for anyone wanting to start, grow or scale a profitable product business. No more trawling Google trying to find the answers to your questions or wading through general business advice that speaks mainly to service-based businesses. Whether you're still at the idea stage or you've been going for a while but want to get more focused and organised when it comes to your business, the Resilient Retail Club is the place for you. With a library of courses tailored to creative product businesses, several live sessions a month, and a supportive and active community, the Resilient Retail Club is the perfect membership to help you hit your goals faster. Check it out at resilientretailclub.com.